everybody. Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. Today, as always, I'm going to try and bring you the latest on the stories that I think people are interested in hearing about, the stories that I think we need to hear a little more about. I'm going to bring it to you with audio and context and commentary and clarity, and I'm going to try and help you get completely caught up on the big stories that are affecting us. Included in the pod today, you're going to hear some of Premier Doug Ford's news conference from yesterday. That's Ontario Premier Doug Ford. You are also going to hear the latest from police in British Columbia that are investigating the school shooting yesterday at Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. What a horrific tragedy. I'm going to have some thoughts on that when I get to that part of the pod, and that's coming up in just a few minutes. First off, though, I just want to take a second to acknowledge the insane number of people that messaged me yesterday. If you didn't hear yesterday's pod, I made an announcement with about 11, 12 minutes left in the pod. And basically what I said is this: I'm in. I'm running. And the amount of people that have reached out, I swear I cannot keep up with my inbox right now. You know, I thought I had all my messages cleared out yesterday, had a break for dinner, and then bam, over 100 more messages in like an hour and a bit. It is overwhelming in all the best ways how much support has come in already. And I want to thank you very much for that. I promise to keep you posted and let you know when I can. A few of you noticed a few nuances in what I said yesterday, trying to read into that. And I will have some of those for you on listener DMs when I get to that episode on Friday. So thank you very much for that. I guess we jump right into the school stuff, right? There's no protocol for how to handle a situation like this when there has been an unspeakable tragedy like a school shooting. And let's also point out here that that doesn't happen very often in Canada. Before I get to the British Columbia RCMP, let me read you the story as it's written this morning by the Canadian Press. Mounties say about 100 students and staff were evacuated from Tumbler Ridge Secondary after police received a report of an active shooter at the school yesterday at 1:20 p.m. local time. BC Solicitor General Nina Krieger said police arrived at the school within 2 minutes of receiving that call. The community then went into lockdown. That lasted several hours. RCMP confirmed it was a lone shooter who was found dead at the school, the same person described in an earlier alert as a female in a dress with brown hair. While they believe the shooter died of self-inflicted injuries, police say they were not in a place to understand why any of this violence took place. And I think we can all agree with that. How do you wrap your mind around this? And parents, how are you feeling today? You get up and you send your kids to school and you trust that they're going to be safe and you're going to see them at the end of the day. Well, there's at least 7 students that are not going to go home to their families. This is just mortifying what happened yesterday in British Columbia. Let's go now to the BC RCMP. This is an update that's about 2 minutes long.
On February 10th at approximately 1:20 p.m., Tumbler Ridge RCMP received a report of an active shooter at Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. A police-initiated public alert was issued as officers responded. The alert was canceled at around 5:30 p.m. once police determined there was no outstanding suspects and no ongoing threat to the public. As part of the initial response, officers entered the school to locate the source of the threat. During their search, police located multiple victims. The individual believed to be the shooter was also found deceased from what appears to be a self-inflicted injury. 6 additional people, not including the suspect, were found deceased inside the school. 2 victims were airlifted to hospital with serious or life-threatening injuries, and a 3rd victim died being transported. All remaining students and staff have been safely evacuated, which was about 100 people. Police are working closely with the school district to support a coordinated reunification process for families. Approximately 25 others are being assessed and treated at the local medical center for non-life-threatening injuries. As the investigation progressed, officers identified a secondary location believed to be connected to the incident. 2 additional victims were located deceased inside a residence. Police are conducting further searches of other homes and properties to determine whether anyone else may be injured or otherwise linked to today's events. BC RCMP Major Crimes has assumed conduct of the investigation and is working to determine the full circumstances surrounding this incident. We are not in a place now to be able to understand why on what may have motivated this tragedy. This was a rapidly evolving and dynamic situation, and the swift cooperation from the school, first responders, and the community played a critical role in our response. Our thoughts are with the families, loved ones, and all those impacted by this tragic incident. We're still trying to determine a lot about the shooter at this stage right now. We believe we've been able to identify the shooter, but for privacy reasons and obviously for the conduct of the investigation, we're not releasing that information at that time. On February 10th at approximately...
Okay, that's enough. That is the latest from the British Columbia RCMP. One of the things that I like to put out here after a situation like this, where there's been an active shooter or a situation that is garnering national and international attention, is this. And I think it's important again. Let's wait for the investigation. Let's wait for the investigation and figure out what happened here. Because already, this only just happened yesterday. I basically woke up to the news today because I wasn't aware of it when I went to bed last night, and it wasn't a great start to the day. I mean, how do you start your day knowing 7 kids got shot at school? A lot of people have messaged me already. Scott, did you hear that the shooter was trans? This was a biological male who identifies as a female, hence the report that it was a female with long brown hair that police were looking for. It was a biological male that identifies as a female, a transgender person. Listen, I don't know if that's going to, in the end, when the investigation's done, I don't know if that's going to play a role in this investigation at all. If you ask me off the top of my head, Scott, what do you think of the fact that they're trans? I don't think anything. I don't know that this is something that we need to bring into this equation because it may have nothing to do with it. Now, I'm open to possibilities, though. And I'm already seeing a lot of people, some of them, and actually quite a few of them, American, that are trying to say that the reason this happened is because the person is trans. Again, let me just put this out there and make a plea to you. I don't know if that's going to end up being relevant information, but right now, as far as I'm concerned, it's not. Let's find out what the police discover in their investigation. Isn't that reasonable? Let's give the families a little bit of time to grieve. I don't think right now we need to start jumping to conclusions. I think at the moment we need to, these people in British Columbia that are, what do you do after a situation like this? I think they need to know the country is behind them and supporting them in any way we can. The motivation of the shooter, that'll come out as part of the investigation. But for now, let's think about the families. Let's have a little bit of humanity. Something else I want to play for you on this topic, and then I'm going to move on because, frankly, it's so heavy and I don't really know what to say. What do you say after kids get shot at school? This is one of the students. He is a grade 12. He was live streaming last night. His mother, I believe you hear in this video as well. This is 2 minutes and 12 seconds. This is an eyewitness account from the school.
I've never been through a lockdown in the school before. Alarm starts going off. Miss Steely's running around in the hallways on the phone. She's saying, "This is a lockdown, close the doors." So we closed the doors, and I think for a while I didn't think anything was going on. I thought it was just like maybe a secure and hold. But once everything started circulating, we kind of realized that something was wrong. We got tables and barricaded the doors. And I believe we sat in there for about 2 hours, 30 minutes until members of the RCMP and I believe SWAT had come through the door and escorted us all out of the high school. It's definitely tense. I think we were all very nervous, so we tried to keep things light and just try and keep each other motivated and not fall into grief. But once people sent me some photos, it definitely set in what was actually happening.
What kind of photos were they sending?
They were disturbing, just showing blood and things like that.
A roller coaster of emotions is a nice way to put it right now. I got home and locked my doors, and my 20-year-old son was at home, so I was at home with him. And then I was just staying on the phone with Darian, panic setting in until I laid eyes on him.
And then what was it like to actually hold him?
Oh, I gave him a very, very big hug. And he's not going to be out of my sight for a while now.
I think a lot of people are shaken up right now, especially when we got told what the true numbers were. It felt like I was in somewhere that I had only seen across a TV until you're actually inside of it and directly affected. Hold each other close and just we're gonna be able to get through this. And I just think now more than ever we embrace the fact of such a small community and we work together to make sure that everyone gets out of this.
Wow. I mean, holy cow. You can tell how impacted that student is. You can tell how impacted his mother is. And that's just one student and his mother. There's a lot of people affected by this. And again, I really don't know what to say at this point. I'm just going to leave the story there and do exactly what I said we should do from the beginning. We should wait for the investigation and then we might learn more about the motivation. But right now, I don't see any point in speculating. I don't see any point in trying to draw a parallel with their sexual orientation. Again, it might be relevant when we look back, but right now, I don't think it is. And I don't think it's going to change anything anyway. Let the investigation unfold. Let the police do their work. Let those families grieve and start to heal. And we'll circle back on this. Absolutely. There's going to be lots of time to talk about it, but I don't think we need to get too caught up in the moment right now. I think that that's the best advice I can give you is don't get too wrapped up in it now, the why and things like that. Let's just think about the amount of families that are affected. Let the police do their work, and we'll come back to this if there's any further developments to talk about. But God, is that ever a sad, sad story. I want to move on now. One of the stories that I intentionally did not cover yesterday was the story of Donald Trump threatening to not allow a new bridge that connects Canada to the USA to open. This bridge is called the Gordie Howe Bridge. The Gordie Howe Bridge is a Canadian bridge. Canada's paying to build it, and it will go from Windsor into Detroit. It'll be another option for people to cross into America or back into Canada. Also another method for supply chains and shipping and things like that. Great. I feel like we kind of needed another bridge because anybody who's ever crossed down at the Ambassador Bridge knows that it's congested at the best of times. Now, there's also a tunnel that you can go to Detroit from Windsor, and it too gets clogged up from time to time. That's part of the reason we needed another bridge. Well, Donald Trump is going to use that bridge to try and restart trade talks with Canada. But he's pointed out he's not happy about a number of things, including he's actually saying it now. He doesn't like the fact that Canadian provinces are banning U.S. liquor from our liquor stores. Now, the president hasn't pointed it out, so I will. The U.S. never banned our alcohol. There's no restriction on Canadian booze going into America, but we have a restriction on American booze coming into Canada. And that's something Doug Ford waves around like an animal. He is like a dog with a bone in his insane king-like control over the LCBO, talking specifically about Ontario. Well, yesterday, Doug Ford did a news conference where he addressed this. By the way, before I get to Doug, part of the reason I didn't mention it is I really don't think we need to get caught up in the day-to-day drama of Donald Trump. This is a negotiation. It's supposed to be happening between adults, although I don't see very adult-like behavior happening on either side, if I'm being honest. However, I don't know that we need to get caught up in the trivial stuff. A lot of the stuff that comes from Trump is just noise, and it's part of the posturing as part of a negotiation. So I didn't know if I had to cover it, but since Doug Ford came out and did this news conference anyway, I figure what the hell. Let's give it some air. Here's Doug Ford.
Very happy to hear that the Prime Minister spoke to President Trump. And as for the bridge and the President Trump's comments, make no mistake about it, as sure as I'm talking to you, I'm very confident this bridge is going to open. I'll tell you the reason why it's going to open, because it's in the best interest of the American economy, the Americans, the 13 Congress people that are going for re-election in the midterms, which the Republicans own probably 7 of those seats and 1 Senate seat as well. And the worst thing you could do is hurt the American economy and continue to hurt the American economy. And folks, the deal was struck that Canada, the federal government, built it. And if President Trump didn't want this to go forward, why did he fast track it in 2019? I'm sorry. And 9 years ago, I should say. He fast-tracked it in 2017. And so all of a sudden he changed his mind and said it's not good. So that's a false fact. And number two, that after the tolls, we pay off our share of the bridge. It's going to be Michigan that owns half of it. So this was all agreed to. It's going to enhance the American economy and obviously the Canadian economy. What it would cost.
I'm going to cut the premier off here because I really don't have a whole lot of time for Doug Ford lately, to be perfectly honest with you. Listen, the part of the reason that this has come up is because the president has now realized that because this bridge is so over budget, even with charging tolls, it's so unrealistic that it will ever fully be paid off. It's never going to be paid off, meaning the Americans are never going to own part of it. The toll is what, $5? This bridge cost billions and billions and billions to build. They also used all Canadian material, which I suppose is all right if we're building it. But if the deal is we need to recoup our costs before we go into a full joint ownership, and we're never going to be able to pay off the cost using just tolls, then I understand the hesitation. Now, that's something that Doug Ford will not acknowledge there because Doug has an agenda. Doug bringing up the midterm elections is another clear attempt, and everyone needs to understand this. That is a clear attempt by Doug Ford to continue poking the bear. You know, Doug is going to say in this news conference, I want to deal with the Americans, and he'll just say it till he's blue in the face. But everything he does is contrary to getting a deal done with the Americans. We don't have one right now because Doug Ford blew it up. That's just my opinion.
And being strong. But folks, this is not the time. And this is my message to the Prime Minister and the people of Canada. This is not the time to roll over and let President Trump take advantage of us. Keep saying that we've taken advantage of the Americans. Contrary to what I believe in, it's the other way around. But we want a strong relationship with our closest friend and ally, and we're going to continue moving forward. But you got to ignore all the rhetoric.
I'm tempted to ignore the rhetoric coming from our side, to be honest with you. Listen, let's keep in mind the timeline here. Mark Carney said he would have a deal by July. Then he pushed it back to August. November, everybody was reporting on it. We have a deal in principle. It's all but done. And Mark Carney and President Trump are going to announce there is a deal on tariffs. Then Doug Ford intentionally released that tariff ad and blew the whole thing up. Now, Doug Ford continues to provoke the Americans by taunting them on their television, by threatening them in their elections, and by continuing to block U.S. booze from the LCBO. He's using it like it's his own personal liquor store, and it's not. Let's go to some of the Q&A.
The president mentioned the LCBO ban, that Ontario is banning booze on LCBO shelves. That's a policy that you implemented. Mm-hmm. Does his mention of that make you more likely to remove the ban or less likely to remove the ban, because it clearly it's getting inside his head? Yeah,
well, it's obviously working. It's an irritant, but there's one thing President Trump can do: get rid of Canadian tariffs. All it does is it's a tax on the American people. It's an attack on the American economy. Get rid of it, and we're good to go. The good news is our wineries, and especially in Niagara, they've seen a jump of close to 70% because people are tasting great Ontario-made wine, and they're enjoying it. So you're not backing off of that? No, and I encourage people not to back off on it. This is key that we even double down if we have to. We're the largest purchaser of alcohol in the entire world, and that's one of our key negotiating areas that we can resolve within a minute. All President Trump has to do is get rid of the unfair tariffs he's putting on Canadians. I want to go back to the bridge. He said there was no U.S. content. It's not.
You know, Doug Ford just backed up exactly what I just told you. He's acting like a king. He's acting like Donald Trump. He is taking away adults' ability to make their own choices in Ontario, and he's basically force-feeding people Ontario wine. You want to drink? Well, you got to drink the Canadian stuff because we're not allowing the American. What would happen if Donald Trump turned around and said, you know what? Screw you guys. We never banned your alcohol. You banned ours. And you're doing it continuously to extend this trade war because you want political opportunities. Doug Ford used it to get himself reelected. It worked for Mark Carney. Now there's talk that there's going to be a spring election. They're not going to resolve this with the Americans. They have no interest in resolving it with the Americans because this trade war is the entire premise of coming back to the people and asking them for a majority mandate. We'll talk a little bit more about that as time goes on. What if Donald Trump decided, you know what? I won't ban all Canadian alcohol, but let me just ban the Canadian wine. The U.S. is the third largest bottled wine importer by volume for Canada. We sold $65 million U.S. worth of Canadian wine to America. Do our wine producers want to take that hit? Is it worth it? Or should we just get back to playing civil here? Stop banning alcohol when they didn't ban ours. Let adults make adult choices. But Doug doesn't believe in that. He does not believe that you as an adult are responsible enough to make your own choices. He proved it. Proved it beyond a shadow of a doubt during COVID, and he continues to maintain those ways. That's Doug Ford for you.
When you mentioned doubling down, what did you mean by that?
Well, let's not waver. Let's not buckle to President Trump's threats. Let's be strong as we have been. Let's continue to be strong. Negotiate through strength, not weakness. And we need to move forward. And I think the president has to realize if he doesn't, the midterms aren't going to turn out too well for him. And just imagine if he took a different approach, President Trump, how wealthy and strong the whole world could be, and everyone would be thriving and prospering. And as I always say, you can't unscramble an egg, you got to make the omelet larger. And it's unfortunate he's taken this approach to hurt his own people. He's hurting the American people and the American economy.
It's one way to look at it, I suppose, but this is a ridiculous fight that we are prolonging intentionally. You know what? If you take anything from this pod, please just understand this. When the government comes out and says, we want to resolve this, you've got to understand they don't want to resolve it. Everything they've done is to make it seem like we're making progress and then blow it up. Doug Ford and Mark Carney are in lockstep. They do not want a deal because it's way better for them politically to not have a deal. They can have all these crazy authoritarian powers. They can do wild stuff and spend endless amounts of money, basically unchecked, as long as we have this emergency. The Americans have been very clear. They even told us what the issues were. Jamil Jamani went down there just 2 weeks ago. He said, listen, we can get a deal done here. It's a couple of things we're going to have to compromise on, and compromise does work both ways. The Americans need to understand that. It's a negotiation, though. What Doug Ford is doing, taunting them with the booze, poking the bear, threatening Donald Trump with the midterms. That's not going to move the needle with Donald Trump, and everyone knows it. Donald Trump will take care of the midterms when it comes time to vote in the midterms. He's not worried about what Doug Ford has to say about the midterms, but he's certainly not going to like Doug again injecting himself into American politics to keep this trade war going. If you've lost your job because of tariffs, just know we were close to a deal in the summer. We had a deal in November. And the two main people on this file, Doug Ford and Mark Carney, are the ones standing in the way of getting a deal done. They both said, give me your vote. I'll fix this. Well, now they realize it's actually better if we don't. And they're going to continue going down that road. Listen very carefully to the premier. He's not actually trying to solve this. He wants to keep it going, at least until Mark Carney gets a majority government. Here's another one from the media.
Any assurance that any international automaker is ready to open a plant in Canada yet?
Not yet, but let's hope. We've created the environment and the conditions for companies to come here. We've cut over $12 billion of burden off the backs of people, off the backs of companies, to create the environment to be competitive around the world. And I'm going to, once again, call out Hyundai. And Kia. They're selling 220,000 cars a year here. You have to open up a facility. I want to thank PowerCo and Volkswagen down in St. Thomas. They're well on their way. Let's bring vehicles here. But this is all conditional as well on having a great trade agreement, a fair trade agreement with the United States.
So there's Doug. Jesus. He doesn't understand the irony, and that's the funny part. Doug will come out here and say, we've created the conditions for business. We've created the conditions for making cars in Ontario. No, you haven't. You just said they're not going to do it until we get a deal done with the Americans. And Doug is the one standing in the way of getting a deal done with the Americans. And by the way, speaking of creating the right business conditions, did we cut taxes? Because I don't think we did. It's still very expensive to operate a business in Ontario. Very expensive. Any restrictive rules? They just announced some new ones last week as far as emissions are concerned on automakers. Come on. That's just a bold lie. We've created the conditions for businesses to set up. And the first question from the media, well, have any signed up? No, not yet. Probably won't until we get a deal done with the Americans. Then get a deal done with the Americans. Nope. Again, not going to do it until Mark Carney gets a majority government. That's what Doug Ford is waiting for. They're going to keep this going until Mark Carney gets a majority government.
What do you think of that? And is there any progress your office has made? I know you're talking to Diageo right now.
Yes, that is correct. My message to Diageo when I spoke to him is help me help you. Come up with ideas how you can hire more people. Again, as I mentioned, I'm sure they're bright business people. I know their company's hurting a bit, but in saying that, you don't go after your largest customer in the world. It's very simple. How about the 200 people that lost their jobs? And I know we're placing a few of them down at the Windsor Auto Plant at Stellantis, so we thank them for that. But again, we need to see some opportunities for Ontarians.
Doug Ford did not stand up and make that same threat to other companies that are closing in Ontario. He's probably got some sort of a personal hate for the people at Diageo and Crown Royal. Where's that passion when it comes to the auto jobs? Where's that passion when it comes to the parts supplier jobs? Where's that passion for all the restaurant workers that are losing their job? We wouldn't be going through this if we had a deal with the Americans. Doug Ford knows it. Doug Ford is the one who continues to try and poke the bear and make sure that we don't get a deal with the Americans. There's no other way to look at it. Help me help you. You don't turn on your best customer. They closed one plant. Yeah, it's terrible that 200 people lost their job, but in the grand scheme of things, when you look at the amount of jobs being lost, it's a pretty small number. Tens of thousands of people in the federal civil service are losing their job. Doug Ford is not a word to say about that. Not a word to say about the auto workers that are losing their job at Stellantis and GM, and the list goes on. Why? Why those 200 jobs? Why that one plant in particular? He's begging Diageo, give me an off-ramp here. Please throw me a bone so I can walk this back. If I ban the Crown Royal, I'm going to look terrible. And he will.
Can you comment on your conversations with the Prime Minister about a possible early election? Why you said that stability is necessary right now?
Well, you know something, I don't divulge our conversations, but I'll be very frank with you. When you get 13 premiers in a room, politics comes up. And politics of every type comes up. That came up, but that's going to be up to the Prime Minister. It's going to be up to the people to decide. If they do decide to call an election, has nothing to do with me. I called my election. I'm good. We're moving forward, and that's it.
So it has nothing to do with him, but he's actively talking to the Prime Minister about that. We know that. Nothing to do with me. I already had my election. Well, then what are you talking to the Prime Minister about it for? We had a private conversation, but I won't divulge the details. Why not? He's the Prime Minister. You're the Premier. Fill in the people that voted for you.
What was but you had some advice to him, right? Because you have done this in the past, and you have talked about the need for stability. And
yeah, I appreciate that, but there was only two people in the room, me and him, and I don't divulge that conversation. But is there conversations with 13 premiers in the room? Sure, there's conversations.
Would you like to see a majority government though for stability, so that we don't have uncertainty given the threat, the existential threat?
I've always said I don't care about political stripes. I'll work with anyone. I think I've proved that. I don't care if it's a Liberal federal government or an NDP mayor. I'll work with anyone that has the best interest of Ontario at heart. That's what I'm focused
So
on.
a majority would be preferable, though.
You're putting those words into my mouth? Nope, I'm not.
So you
It's up to
minority, though.
No. Oh, I love that one. Robert, what I want, I just want Ontario to prosper and keep moving forward. That's what I want. I'll work with anyone who gets elected.
Well, what was the Prime Minister's reaction, though? Like when they're bringing this up, the poll numbers, look, he's 29 points ahead from Pierre Poilievre.
That's up to the Prime Minister, and that's up to his caucus to decide. And we want stability across the country. And we're all working together of all different political stripes at the provincial level with all the different premiers. And we just want to make sure that we have a strong economy in Ontario, which means a strong economy across the entire country.
Listen to what he says and then watch what he does. There's a massive difference. Clearly, someone has warned him, don't be a hothead, calm down, speak in that nice monotone sound. You got to do that, Doug. Very monotone. Don't get animated at all, because then you're going to sound like Trump as much as you're acting like him. If the Prime Minister means what he says, that he wants to get a deal done with the Americans, the first thing he should do is put a muzzle on Doug Ford. But of course, that's not what they want. Not until the election happens. You just heard Doug Ford very coyly and with a smug smile on his face. Oh, that's up to the Prime Minister. Oh, maybe politics came up. Maybe it didn't. Of course it came up. They're planning it. Here's the play. Doug Ford wants Mark Carney to get a majority government. Why does Doug Ford want Mark Carney to get a majority government? Because that's the only tool left in the toolbox to get rid of Pierre Poilievre, and Doug Ford wants Pierre Poilievre's job. He's 1,000% running for Prime Minister. But he can't run while Pierre's there. So he will throw the entire Conservative movement under the bus, cost them 4 more years with the Liberal government, to try and get himself elected leader of the federal Conservative Party. And he's going to try and position himself as a centrist when he's clearly not.
Think he's considering it? Do you think?
I don't know. That's up to him to decide.
Have you given any advice to Pierre Poilievre? Have you given any advice to Pierre Poilievre about a possible election?
No. I saw Pierre at the portrait hanging of Prime Minister Harper. Shook hands, said hello, congratulated him, and
for what?
For getting a convention. Yeah, 80-some-odd%. But anyways, you don't win elections at conventions. You win elections across the country. So let's see what happens if the Prime Minister decides to call elections. Sorry, Colin.
The only thing that's happened between a few weeks ago and now is Jamil Jivani going down to the United States. Do you think that Jamil Jivani's trip to Washington had some impact on what the president has said today?
Well, I'm not too sure what the conversation happened, but I encourage everyone to go down, every stakeholder, every corporation, every business owner, every premier, and the Prime Minister encouraged the premiers to continue to advocate for Canada.
He can't bring himself to say a single nice thing about anyone in the Conservative movement. None of them. Because he wants to be the boss. He wants to run the place. This is not the first time I've pointed this out, but I am glad to see more and more people are starting to catch on to it. I'm glad that more and more people are starting to realize what the play is. Elbows up was always a lie. Protect Ontario? What got protected? Seriously, what got protected? These were election slogans, not actual philosophies, not policies. They were just slogans to try and convince you to vote for them. That's all they were. I'm going to move on here. I want to play a little bit of committee testimony here. This one happened yesterday. Andrew Lawton is a member of Parliament that I like a lot. I find him to be a good, common sense person. He is the member of Parliament for Elgin, St. Thomas, London South. He, in committee, wanted to ask a few questions about the CBC. This is an interesting one because the CBC is something I'm very interested in. I find, just in my experience, them to be very biased in their coverage. And I'm wondering, why should the taxpayers pay for it when they're really super serving one political ideology and completely ignoring the other? If it's not going to be fair at all, why do all Canadians have to pay for it? Why do we have to pay to receive a basic indoctrination every time we watch television? This is a good set of questions here from Andrew Lawton yesterday to the Standing Committee on Finance.
Minister, what do you believe fundamentally the role of CBC is?
I think, and even if you were to consider one of the great philosophers of the conservative movement in Burke, that it, as I mentioned earlier, is a fourth pillar of democracy. So keeping you accountable to the public by making sure there is reliable information that people can have and consume as they get their information about whatever they want, but most importantly, judge and elect people like me and you to this place.
Does a television show about a tomato that speaks to children about colonialism fit that?
I don't know. What do you think?
I would say that's not something that government needs to subsidize. There have also been, just to use a recent example, a CBC News story called "I Felt People Would Judge Me for Getting Botox, Then I Realized I Was Judging Myself." I haven't read that. It may or may not be interesting, but is this vital to the Canadian identity and cultural fabric that we must pay for this?
Well, I think you expect your public broadcaster to have shows that are relevant to the public. It doesn't have to be necessarily relevant to you or me. And as an important aspect of that, I shouldn't be telling them what to do. I can have my view on it, but again, I shouldn't be telling them what to do.
If CBC were not there, is the belief that there would be no one else to broadcast the Olympics? Something that countries around the world or broadcasters around the world spend huge amounts of money for the rights to do. Why is a state broadcaster needed to galvanize what could be a moneymaker for private media companies?
You could probably debate about it, but I just think it makes sense. There could be, but also the CBC does a pretty good job of it. And why wouldn't it do?
Do you believe CBC's role should be to fill gaps that otherwise no one else would fill, or is it to, do something, even if it means competing with private players in the market?
I think definitely it's a lot of the former and perhaps some of the latter. We talked with my colleague Ken McDonald about getting into remote regions. I think CBC has a duty to get that information into remote regions where it isn't economically viable to do so. So absolutely. Maintaining the vitality of our official languages, especially in francophone communities outside Quebec, is key, given the state of the language in those communities.
I don't know if the tomato spoke about colonialism in both official languages or not.
Maybe not, but I'm sure it did a great job of it.
Okay. I yield to Ms. Thomas.
Isn't that an interesting exchange? For those who don't know, CBC, which receives a ton of taxpayer money, it's in the billions, they use our taxpayer money to go out and bid on things like the rights to carry the Olympics. Then they box out all the other broadcasters so they can't even talk about the Olympics. On my radio show, I'm not even allowed to say I'm doing an Olympic update because that cuts into CBC's territory. Well, CBC used taxpayer money to win the rights to the Olympics. Who did they outbid? Rogers, Sportsnet, Bell, TSN. If Rogers, a private company, or Bell, a private company, wanted to spend their own money to get the rights to the Olympics, why on earth would CBC use our tax dollars to outbid a private company and get the rights to the Olympics? That doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense in any way. I'm really curious to see where this goes. And by the way, I do sort of believe in the defund the CBC movement, but there's got to be a lot of nuance to that. It won't happen under this government, but if there's a new government, one of the promises is to defund the CBC. It's not actually going to be defunded, just so you know, and the CBC is not going anywhere, but they've certainly got to change around the funding model because clearly CBC is not being responsible with our money. How many staff from the CBC and executives and board members are over living it up in Italy right now on the taxpayer dime? How many of them? A lot of our money is being spent on something here that it doesn't need to be spent on. I've got other committee testimony here that I could play, but I really want to jump to something else, and I'm almost at time. I'm going to play for you a little bit more of something that I've been talking about a lot over the last couple of weeks, the Epstein files. There are a number of U.S. representatives from Congress who have been able to view the unredacted versions of the Epstein files. That's in preparation for upcoming testimony that they're going to be part of. Representative Lauren Boebert talking yesterday on the Rob Schmidt show. Listen to this.
there are code words that suggest Jeffrey Epstein and his associates could maybe even be engaging in some sort of consumption. Is that human consumption? Are there code words? There's a lot of talk of beef jerky. There's a restaurant called The Cannibal where the owner is listed in some of these documents. Now, that isn't a restaurant that is just proclaiming to serve human meat by any means. But some of this just, it seems that there's a lot of conspiracies that make you wonder. And I saw more emails about torture, and these coded conversations still have a very clear topic that torture was big. It was a big driver for them. And these were sick people doing very, very sick things.
Sick people doing very, very sick things and still no arrests. Wild, isn't it? Let's go to one more. This one was a very honest one. This was Representative Melanie Stansberry. She had just left the Department of Justice. She sat in her car. I'm going to be honest, it looks like she'd been crying after reading what she read in the unredacted Epstein files. I want to play just a little bit of this for you. It's going to be somewhat edited, but if you want to see the full video and get full context, it is on her social media. This is kind of hard to hear. I feel bad for her because, well, she didn't do anything wrong except try and pursue the truth and pursue justice. And now she is forever scarred by what she's seen.
Hey, everyone. Well, I just got back to the Capitol after spending the morning at the Department of Justice reading the Epstein files, and it's a lot to process. There's a lot of truly dark, disgusting, and disturbing material in those files. And to understand the depths of depravity, I just can't even. There aren't words to describe what are in those files. But it's very clear that the United States government has failed to hold perpetrators accountable for decades in this case, with the original sin of failing to prosecute Jeffrey Epstein in 2006 when the FBI and the Department of Justice had the opportunity to, which allowed him to continue to abuse women across his properties and across the world. And the miscarriage of justice in this case is just stunning, appalling, disgusting. And I'm sorry. I mean, just what happened to people in all of these places is just horrific. I also spent some of my time at DOJ looking at the lists of individuals who the FBI had received and investigated tips of sexual assault and violence on. Those are public documents. They're in the public domain. Donald Trump is on them. Absolutely, 100%. There were multiple credible tips and corroborated tips provided to the FBI by survivors. And yeah, there's just a lot here. So, more to be said about it, but that's my initial take on the whole thing. So, I'll keep you guys up to date. Bye, everyone.
Wow. So she's saying Donald Trump is definitely in them. Yesterday, the narrative was Donald Trump was the informant. Donald Trump was the one who called the police on Epstein. Now she's saying there are multiple corroborated tips to the FBI. Reasonable ones that should have been investigated. They involve Donald Trump. Why aren't they, or why weren't they being investigated? And by the way, I want to point out, it's not too late to lay charges here. It's not. The people who did this have to be held accountable. That's how I feel about it. Friends, that's my time for today. I appreciate you so much for listening. Another episode coming your way tomorrow, and there's going to be a lot to talk about there too. If I can just leave you with one thing here. Number one, realize that Doug Ford is not really that interested in helping get a deal done with the Americans. He is provoking them. He is taunting them, and he's doing that for a reason. I don't fully understand why, but It's being done. The other thing, when it comes to the shooting in Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia, let's wait for the investigation. Let's not jump to conclusions. There will be lots of time to dissect what happened here and what the motivation was, what was behind this. But right now, it is about the victims. It is about the families. And that's where our attention should lie. Have a great day. I'll catch you right back here in less than 24 hours.